It actually works. One glass of this actually works. It fuels the mitochondria via a backdoor mechanism. Normally, our mitochondria, which is extremely important for insulin resistance, uses glucose, or it'll use fatty acids, or it'll use ketones. But there's a backdoor way to fuel the mitochondria that isn't working well with insulin resistance. When we are insulin resistant, our mitochondria have a hard time using fuel. Metabolic dysfunction is more about an issue with using fuel and mitochondrial dysfunction and inflammation than anything else. We're talking about using strategically apple cider vinegar, and I learned from Dr. Dom D'Agostino, one of the world's leading neuroscientists, that apple cider vinegar fuels the mitochondria in a different way that could potentially rekindle it. In this video, I'm going to break down what Dom said, and I'm going to break down the science, and I'll break down the mechanisms. But that's only one part of it, because you won't know how to use it. Then in the second section, I'll explain how it actually helps with insulin resistance and fat loss, and when you should specifically use it. And then in the third section, I'll tell you about how to use it for the brain specifically, which will still have a big impact on fat loss, because fat loss and insulin resistance have much to do with the mitochondria in the brain. So what Dom had mentioned to me was that apple cider vinegar turns into acetate in our bloodstream. And I know from previous videos that acetate can kind of be used by the mitochondria, but what he explained to me is that it allows the mitochondria to have a new fuel source when that mitochondria is not working well. We got into this discussion because we were talking about how ketones can do this. If someone is on a low-carb diet and they're producing ketones, one of the reasons that's good for the mitochondria is because the ketones can get into a mitochondria in a way that glucose cannot. So someone that's insulin resistant starts to have energy again. They start to have this fuel again. Turns out apple cider vinegar can provide acetate, which is also an alternative fuel for the mitochondria. Well, what happens to you when you have apple cider vinegar and the mitochondria starts to work again? You start to have more energy. You start to feel a little bit like yourself again. When you start to feel like yourself again and you move a little bit more and you're feeling energized and active, what happens? Well, you have something called GLUT4 translocation that occurs, and that starts soaking up glucose, and that allows your mitochondria to start using glucose again, and you slowly start to come out of this hole you've been in for a very long time. It's painfully miserable to be insulin resistant, and I know because I was insulin resistant for 6 years. I was type 2 diabetic for a period of that time. So what this does is it turns the mitochondria back on by almost finding a hidden switch that we didn't know was there. Insulin resistance makes it so that the cell is resistant to insulin and can't use the glucose well. But what if there was a back door and acetate went in that door and turned the mitochondria on? But unfortunately, this isn't going to do us much good if we don't know how to use it and when to use it. So that's where we get into the fat loss discussion. With fat loss, if we start to drop some extra fat, we reduce the inflammation, and when we reduce the inflammation, we have better cellular signaling, and the insulin receptors can now receive the insulin signal better. So this helps us with fat loss and with insulin resistance and all the downstream benefits there. So what you want to do, there's 3 different times that you should be using apple cider vinegar if this is your goal. One is first thing in the morning, which you probably already know, in a fasted state, okay? The reason is because if acetate is a background fuel or a backup fuel for the mitochondria, it's going to be able to ignite and get the mitochondria working. The mitochondria is more like a battery than a powerhouse, believe it or not. Okay, there is photon tunneling, there is all kinds of different voltage exchanges and polarization. It's literally creating light. Like the mitochondria is way more than just a nutrient power plant. Okay, it is not just about ATP, it's about literally being a battery. When we turn that battery on, we have more places that are burning fat. We just turned on more batteries and turned on more fat burning factories. So of course, apple cider vinegar isn't literally burning the fat, but it's turning on the mitochondria, which is the core site for fat loss to occur and for hormones to be produced and for all kinds of other energetic processes within the body. You literally just turned on a part of your body, a part of your entire being that's been suppressed. This is huge. So doing it fasted allows the mitochondria to turn on in a state when you would be using fats already. When you don't have food in your system, your body's pulling from your stored tissue. So when you have apple cider vinegar fasted, it allows the mitochondria to use that stored tissue better. Now, the next time you're going to want to use apple cider vinegar is in conjunction with carbohydrates. And it's not just because it helps you out with the carb digestion. We're talking about using it in a strategic way that allows those carbohydrates that would normally cause a high blood sugar and more insulin resistance to potentially get used. Because now the acetate is providing a fuel for those mitochondria that didn't have the ability to use fuel. And they might just so happen to turn on and actually use the carbohydrates you ate. Why is this extra good? Because the carbohydrates that you ate would otherwise just cause high blood sugar and be a problem. Hyperinsulinemia, high blood sugar. But if the cells learn to use it, they actually develop the enzymatic function to use it in the future. This is how we crawl our way out of the insulin resistance problem in the first place. Now, there's also this whole thing called the protein leverage hypothesis, which is really, really, really important, and it ties in with apple cider vinegar. Bottom line is we have the strongest evidence, like such strong evidence, that we will eat calories until our protein needs are met. We have a target, almost this random number in some ways, that if we don't hit that target, we are going to continue to eat until we get enough protein. It's not just that protein's satiating. Okay, it's that we are biologically, fundamentally designed to get enough protein. And if we don't get enough protein, our body will have seek and destroy mechanisms turned on to eat everything in our path until we get to that protein. It is really difficult. That's why appetite gets out of control. It's not just that protein's satiating. It's that we have a fixed number we need to get to. It's usually about 0.6 grams per pound of body weight that we need to hit early in the day, by the way, because that's what's going to turn off that mechanism so we don't overeat later in the day. I put a link for my preferred source of protein, by the way, ButcherBox, that link down below, ButcherBox, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, good quality chicken, fish, wild-caught fish, scallops, all that stuff delivered to your doorstep. Amazing tasting ground beef, amazing tasting ground bison, high quality protein, high quality collagen. That link is down below. Again, that's for special picks that I would choose. So my preferred cuts, ribeyes, ground beef, ground bison, all that stuff. Top on the description. You will not regret, just simply because of the taste. The stuff is so dang good. Anyway, that link's down below. But this plays into another thing that we need to know. We need to know how we can use apple cider vinegar to control our appetite. One of the things that Dr. Dom D'Agostino taught me was that, again, this acetate goes into the brain. And if we look at Dr. Chris Palmer's work, the basically brain metabolism, that brain and mental illnesses and all these things are really metabolic issues, our mitochondria not functioning and not having enough energy in the brain. So apple cider vinegar, you take this and it can literally calm you down. It can literally help you make better decisions with your food. This isn't like fly-by-night stuff. The same way that we've seen legit, very esteemed, not just regular randomized controlled trials, but clinicaltrials.gov type studies on ketones being able to rekindle mitochondria in the brain and improve mental illnesses. That is insane already, but acetate has a particularly similar role. So apple cider vinegar can make the brain feel calmer by allowing those mitochondria to turn back on and not have an energy crisis going on where it's not able to actually have enough energy in the brain. So you're like bouncing from region to region and improper signaling. So apple cider vinegar, when you are stressed, or before you have to make a tough decision, or before you eat, before you go out to eat and you want to feel like you're able to decide on what you eat properly. How many times have you been in those situations where you thought you were in control and then you go to sit down to eat and you ate the whole plate and then you ate your kids' remainders too? This can legitimately help you with this. Guys, I'm not making this stuff up. Apple cider vinegar isn't just like a woo-woo witch doctor, Patricia Bragg's apple cider vinegar, like made up stuff. Okay, this is legit. We've seen it with the glycemic index studies. We've seen it with the fat loss research. We've seen it with brain, and we know flat out mechanically what it does with acetate. I did a video here that expands on how to time protein to take advantage of this protein leverage hypothesis and get more fat loss and less overall appetite. It's a really in-depth, very step-by-step video. I put that one right here. As always, keep it locked here on my channel. See you tomorrow.